Hello, welcome to The Good Life, what it is and how to achieve it. My name is Michael Parkman, and last week we talked about habits. Success or failure is determined by the habits that you have. Many people go through life doing things without really thinking about it because it's something that they've done all the time. It's become a habit. You get up in the morning and you have a routine. Whatever your routine is, you do that same thing every day. For me, one of them is when I come in the house from being out, I want to put my keys in the exact same place so that the next day I know exactly where they are. It's a habit. Okay, habits aren't bad unless they're mindless habits. Now, when you're on the athletic fields, and if you play basketball or football or whatever sport, you practice daily, repetitively, because the coaches wanted you to learn what you needed to do so that when it came time to do it in a game, you wouldn't be a step behind thinking about what you needed to do. So they wanted to develop a good habit. Okay, as a lineman, you want to get back to block for your quarterback. There's certain steps that you need to take, certain techniques that you need to use. So you practice that repetitively so that when the pass play is called, you know exactly what to do without going, gee, I need to step to the right, 2 steps back, put my arms in this position. No, you just do it because they've developed that habit through months and years of practice. Now, the other side of that coin is bad habits. Things that you do that you have no idea why you do it, except the fact that that's the way my parents did it, my grandparents did it, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm not disparaging anybody's lineage, but I will say that things that your parents did at certain situations may very well have been great for them at that time, but it may not be necessarily good for you in this time. And that's where you have to break the cycle. You have to make a conscious decision to say, is my reaction good for what's happening today? Think about that for a second. What your parents may have done in the 60s may not work in 2021. You have to make a conscious decision that this is good for this situation. Most of us have gone through life being taught one way or the other that you can't let anybody say or do anything that offends you, that you have to respond to that situation. Basically, I can't let them get that off, disrespecting me. Well, guess what? Most every time that you reacted based on those thoughts, can you honestly say the situation got better? Did your getting it off your chest and not letting somebody get it off make the situation better? Did it improve relationships? I'd be willing to bet that more often than not, the answer is no. So instead of doing the exact same thing and getting the exact same result, which is the definition of insanity, perhaps you might want to do something different. You can't control what anyone says or does, but you can control what you say and what you do, what your responses are. So if somebody says something untoward towards you, it gives you the opportunity to exercise patience and understanding. Oh, but that'll make me look weak. Really? Do you really think that that makes you look weak? Or are you really worried about what everyone else will think about your reaction? And I'd be willing to bet it's the latter, because we're too dependent upon externals, what other people think. But guess what? You don't control everybody else's thoughts. And you also have to look at it as you're trying to better yourself to be the best person you could be. They may not be on that journey. And so their answer is, I've got to react. All of the killing that you see in the city these days, a lot of it's based upon just raw emotion. No thought, nothing, no contemplation, no consideration of the effects that pulling that trigger will have on the victim, the victim's family, the shooter, the shooter's family and friends. None of that comes into play in the moment, because that anger to defend yourself or lash out takes over. And at that point, you are out of your right mind. And then when you get caught, you begin to realize that there are consequences to your actions. When the judge says you're going to jail for 10 to 20 or 20 to life, is you're going to be locked away from everything you know and love and going into a very strange place with people who are worse than you. And that's going to be it for you. Those are the consequences. What happens when you react poorly? When your habitual reaction, which is to lash out at everything that you think is not good for you. What I'm trying to get you to understand is that you can control every aspect of how you respond, regardless of what everyone around you thinks. Don't be concerned about everyone's opinion, because they don't have to live your life. If you do something, you take a life, or you injure somebody based upon what they say you ought to do, those same people that urged you on will immediately say, oh, I didn't make him do it. He didn't have to. But these are the same people that, yeah, get him, do this, do that, do this. You have to do what you think is right at any given time. You have to make that decision for yourself, because you are the one that's going to have the consequences. So you got to learn to develop better habits and better ways of thinking. Now, when I say develop better habits, okay, we've all been wandered around and throughout the city, and you see where people are constructing things and building walls and whatever construction. But if you're building a wall, you start by a brick, and then you add another brick, then you add another brick, and you put another brick on top of that one, another brick on top of that one, and another brick on top of that one, and so on and so forth, until you get to a desired height and you have a wall. But the thing that I'm trying to get you to understand is that wall wasn't automatically built. It was built brick by brick. And that's how you change your habits. The only way you can change a habit is to replace it with a different habit. So if your habit is to get upset at some small event, start off with something small, purpose in your mind that no matter what, you're not going to let that particular event make you angry. If you can do that, if you can step into that gap and go, okay, I'm feeling this rush of emotion. This burns my biscuit. Let me corral that emotion, put that emotion down, look at whatever the situation is and say, how can I make this situation better? What can I learn from this situation? What can I learn from me? Patience. Is this an opportunity to teach someone else something? even if it's just by example. But my point is if you can learn to corral your emotions and put them back in check and look for equanimity meaning balanced mind, then you can proceed to make a decision on what you should do next. And you're not going on raw anger and emotion. Because if you act in raw anger and emotion and the other person acts with raw anger and emotion, somebody's going to be in bad shape, or both of you. Because nobody at that point is thinking in their right mind. But what I need all of you and all of us, including myself, to understand, what I need us to understand is that we do have choices. You may not like the choices. And the only reason you don't like the choice is because you have a preference. I want it to be this way. Well, instead of saying I want it to be this way, look at it for what it is. When you look at the situation for what it is, then you can begin to make decisions on the correct action based upon what it is. Not be despondent because it's not what you thought it was going to be. What you thought it was going to be doesn't make any difference. This is what it is. Deal with that part. Deal with today is what I'm saying. It is imperative that we learn to manage our mental. Don't let your mind take your body places it doesn't need to go. I think back in the old days, we used to say things like, don't let your mouth write a check that your body can't cash. Well, the same thing applies with your mind. Don't let your mind lead you down the wrong path. You have the ability to put the brakes on your emotions should you choose to. Now, what usually happens is the emotions come out and then the excuses come. Well, I wouldn't have done this if they hadn't done that. Slave. Someone else has the power to make you do or not do something. Slave. And I use that term because it's exactly what you are at that point. Because you're saying somebody else has power over you. Slave. Well, if you hadn't have said this, slave. If you hadn't have done this, I would, slave. Think about it. Now, if somebody just called you slave, you would be up in arms. I ain't no slave. I'm my own person. Are you? Or do you let someone else dictate your reactions? Do you let someone else move you to something or another? Do you let someone else make the choices for you? I need you to think about that for a second. Because it is imperative for us to understand exactly where we are and who we are. Because sometimes it's a big difference between our image of ourselves and who we really are. And the problem with that is you see it every day. People do something crazy, outlandish, and when they get caught, the first thing that they say is, that's not who I am. Well, what did you do? But that's not me. And anyone who knows me knows, what did you do? You are what you repeatedly do. Now, you happen to get caught at that time. But you know as well as I do that you've been doing that and had that same feelings and those same thoughts before. It just never came out. But now that it's out, that's not who I am. Learn to take responsibility for you. Someone does or says something, that's not making you do anything. Your opinion of the situation and your acceptance of that opinion that you put on that situation makes you do something. So if you determine that somebody said something bad, whatnot, You've accepted it as bad, and now you said, I now need to respond to that. But I will say that if you develop the habit of saying, this doesn't hurt me, whatever it is they said, it doesn't hurt me. Because once you accept that it doesn't hurt you, then there's no harm. We used to say sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Remember that? It was actually true. But you can learn to walk away and diffuse a situation just by not letting someone else's words move you to reactivity. Because you need to be able to understand and make a decision based on objective observation and rational thinking, not anger. And on the other side of that coin, because we talk a lot about anger, is also about love. Because a lot of people do a lot of crazy things in the name of love. And when you're overwhelmed by love, oh, I love him, I love her, even though they may be abusive, I still love them. You are not in your right mind. Because that emotion of love is so far-fetched in your mind that you can't see what's really going on. And in some cases, you blame yourself for the abuse. What I'm trying to get you to understand is to look at the situation objectively, have a balanced mind, and then make a rational decision about your response. Don't be so reactive. If you can learn to do this, if you can pile on brick by brick by brick, you'll build that wall of success. You can persist in your efforts to be the best person that you can be. You can persist in the pursuit of building good habits and replacing the bad habits with good habits. You can persist until you succeed. Until next time, this is Michael Parkman, and this is The Good Life.